So this happened a couple weeks ago, but I've been sitting on it, trying to make sense of what the hell I even discovered. Let me set the stage first. It was a Friday night, nothing special, just me and my boyfriend at home, doing our usual end-of-week routine. We've been together almost 4 years. Lived together for 2. We've been through some rocky stuff, like most couples, but I thought we were solid. You know? Like, boring in a good way solid. Comfortable. Safe. We were watching some random movie he picked, one of those thriller things where the killer is the neighbor or the dog or something dumb like that. Halfway through, he fell asleep on the couch, snoring with a half-eaten bowl of popcorn on his chest. I remember thinking, that's adorable, and I actually took a photo of him. Dumb. I know. His phone was unlocked, screen still glowing in his hand. It buzzed once, then twice. Just a name I didn't recognize and a line of text that made my stomach tighten up immediately. Not because it was overtly sexual or anything. But because it was casual. Too casual. It said, "Still thinking about last night. You taste like strawberries." That's when the air left the room. And yeah, I looked. I absolutely looked. Don't come at me with the trust is everything speech, because trust goes both ways. And in that moment, something deep in my gut knew that I was about to get punched in the soul. I tapped the message thread. And I swear to God, I wish I hadn't. The conversation was still open from earlier that day. There were maybe 20, 30 messages between him and this guy named Luca Strawberry. Yeah. He had an emoji next to his name. That detail hit me hard for some reason. Like, it meant something. Meant he wasn't just a hookup. Meant my boyfriend put care into labeling him that way. And the strawberry? Jesus Christ. That text wasn't a one-off. That was their thing. I scrolled. My hands were shaking, but not out of fear. I felt like I was about to throw up. There were photos. Not nudes exactly. But intimate. Luca in bed, shirtless, captioned, "Wish you were here this morning. It was cold without you." And my boyfriend's reply? "Next week. I'll tell him I'm flying for work." I stopped breathing. I just sat there, looking at that sentence over and over like it might rearrange itself into something innocent if I stared long enough. I'll tell him I'm flying for work. He'd told me that last week. Said he had meetings in Chicago. I even packed snacks for his trip. I sent him a good luck text the morning he left. I even missed him while he was lying in another guy's bed. What the hell kind of fool was I? I sat there, still staring at that message, while he kept snoring like nothing was wrong. Like the floor hadn't just dropped out from under me. I felt weirdly still. Like when you're in a car crash and everything slows down before the impact. My first instinct wasn't even to wake him up or scream or throw his phone. It was this quiet, hollow kind of sadness. The kind that creeps in when you realize you've been living in a movie someone else was directing and the ending was always going to screw you. I kept reading. Scrolling. There were plans. Hotel confirmations. Screenshots of flights, real ones, booked under his name. This wasn't some one-night thing. They had a system. Luca would fly to different cities sometimes so they wouldn't risk being seen together in ours. He even had an entirely different Instagram account. I only found it because Luca had tagged him in a photo. It was private, but the handle was unmistakable, his middle name, some numbers, and the same strawberry emoji. I felt like I was unraveling someone else's life. And the worst part? There were photos of them together. Holding hands. In restaurants. In hotel rooms. I didn't even get that version of him anymore. The soft, affectionate one. He used to post us all the time when we first got together. But the last time he uploaded anything of us was over a year ago. I thought he was just being more private. Turns out he was being strategic. I sat there for almost an hour, barely blinking, while he kept dozing off next to me. I went through every message, every timestamp, every lie I now had receipts for. And I still hadn't moved. I hadn't cried. I hadn't screamed. I was in some weird emotional limbo where rage and heartbreak were just circling each other in my chest like two wild animals deciding which one would kill me first. Eventually, he stirred. Did that thing where he rubbed his face, blinked at the ceiling like he forgot where he was, then turned and smiled at me like he wasn't a complete stranger now. "You didn't finish the movie," he said, like we were still us. Like I wasn't holding his phone in my hand, screen blowing, messages wide open like an autopsy of my trust. I held up the phone and tilted my head. "Who's Luca?" And that was the moment. That half second where he froze. Where every micro muscle in his face betrayed him. His smile cracked, his eyes flicked down, and he tried to cover it with a laugh. "Wait, what? Why are you going through my phone?" That's the defense he went with. Not guilt. Not regret. Accusation. He reached for it, but I pulled back. My voice came out calm. Too calm. "You lied to me about Chicago. You lied to me about everything. Do you even love me?" And he had the audacity to hesitate. That hesitation? That millisecond of silence after I asked if he loved me? That's what broke me. Not the cheating. Not the second Instagram. Not even the strawberry emoji. It was the pause. The fact that he had to think about it. Finally, he said, "Of course I love you," but it came out too smooth, too automatic, like he was reading from a script he'd rehearsed for a moment like this. I think I hated him more for sounding convincing than for anything he'd actually done. I just stared at him. "You taste like strawberries," I said, quoting Luca's text. That's when his face really changed. His eyes dropped, his shoulders collapsed just slightly, like his body gave away the truth before his mouth could. He looked like a kid who'd been caught shoplifting. He tried to explain. Said it wasn't serious, that it just happened, that I'd been distant lately. That was his big play, turning it around on me. I laughed. It wasn't a funny laugh. It was the kind that sounds like it's crawling out of your throat against your will. A dry, exhausted, "Are you serious right now?" kind of laugh. You've been planning trips with this guy. You've got a secret account. You're in his bed. And I'm the distant one? He said nothing. And in that silence, I made a choice I never thought I'd make. I stood up. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I just said, "You don't live here anymore." He blinked at me, like he didn't understand the words. "You don't live here anymore," I repeated. Slower this time. Quieter. Firmer. It was like he hadn't prepared for consequences. Like he thought I'd just yell, cry, maybe threaten to break up, but that I'd get over it. That I'd still cook him breakfast the next morning and pretend none of this ever happened. But I wasn't playing that role anymore. He stammered. Wait, babe, can we talk about this?" "Talk?" I said. "You've been talking plenty with Luca. Now it's time to move." He stood up, still half asleep, still probably hoping this was some sort of nightmare he'd wake up from. "You're being irrational," he muttered. And I swear, that was the spark. I felt something inside me flip. Not break, just flip. Like a switch. "Irrational?" I said. "You lied. You cheated. You built a second life." I'm reacting like someone who's done being lied to. I walked into the bedroom, grabbed the duffel bag we kept for weekend trips, and started throwing his stuff in it. I didn't even care what went in. I wasn't folding shirts. I was folding the damn relationship. He followed me in, begging me now, voice cracking, tone suddenly soft. Like that would work. "Please." It didn't mean anything. I messed up. Just give me one more chance. I swear. I zipped the bag. "You didn't just mess up," I said. "You chose this. over and over again. And I handed him the bag. He didn't leave right away. He stood there, holding the duffel bag like it was filled with bricks and regret. I could see his brain scrambling for the right words, like maybe if he said the perfect line, this could all rewind. But I was done being the one who waited for someone to choose me. You need to go, I said again. This time with less anger. More tiredness. Like my soul was just done carrying this man's weight. He looked around the room like he was taking inventory. The couch we picked out together. The print on the wall from our first trip. The little chipped mug he used every morning. And then, like some broken instinct, he asked, "Can I at least stay the night? I've got nowhere to go." I almost laughed. The same mouth that had whispered "I miss you" to someone else this week was now asking for my mercy? No. You don't get the safety of my space anymore. I opened the door. For a moment, he just stood there in the hallway, lit by that soft yellow glow we both used to call home. But now it felt like the end of a movie I didn't audition for. He walked out. And just like that, it was quiet. Too quiet. No begging. No slamming doors. Just the faint sound of his footsteps fading, like a mistake finally walking away. I shut the door behind him. Locked it. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I exhaled. The silence after he left wasn't peaceful. Not right away. It was loud. It echoed in every corner of the apartment. Every sound felt exaggerated, the hum of the fridge, the click of the ceiling fan, the creak of the floor under my feet. I could still smell his cologne on the blanket he'd just been wrapped in. And I didn't cry. I thought I would. I wanted to. But instead, I just sat. My body felt hollow, like someone had scooped out my insides and replaced them with static. Not grief. Not anger. Just numbness. That was somehow worse than rage. I stared at the TV, still paused on that same movie scene we never finished. Two characters smiling at each other like idiots, frozen in some romantic comedy version of love. I hated them both for it. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay on my side of the bed, which somehow felt too big and too small all at once. I kept thinking of all the times I'd asked him, "Are we okay?" And he'd smile, kiss my forehead, and say, "We're solid, babe." I wasn't sleeping next to a boyfriend. I was sleeping next to a storyteller. And not even a good one. I finally dozed off around 4 a.m. The kind of sleep that isn't really sleep, just your body shutting down to survive. And when I woke up, there was one notification on my phone. Not from him. From Luca. The message from Luca was short. "I'm sorry. I didn't know about you." That's it. No introduction. No explanation. Just sorry and unknowing, like he was sending a smoke signal from the other side of my now burned relationship. I stared at it for a long time. At first, I didn't know what to feel. Part of me wanted to scream at him. Another part of me wanted to thank him for being the breadcrumb trail that finally exposed everything. I didn't reply. Not yet. But I clicked his profile. Of course I did. And wow. He wasn't some stranger from a hotel bar or a random swipe. He wasn't a one-time mistake. He was someone my boyfriend had built something with. Pictures together. A weekend in Asheville. Matching bracelets. He'd met Luca's dog. They looked happy. And for some reason, that gutted me more than the cheating itself. Because it wasn't just sex. It was connection. It was an entire second life that ran parallel to mine and somehow more alive than the one we had together. I finally responded. "You weren't the only one being lied to." And Luca replied within seconds. "If you ever want to talk, I'm here." I mean that. I didn't answer after that. But I stared at those words. Because in some strange, cruel twist, he had shown me more empathy in two texts than my boyfriend had in the last 6 months. There's this moment after betrayal where your body doesn't know what to do with the rage. It doesn't burn hot like in the movies. It's cold. Heavy. Like trying to breathe with wet cement in your lungs. I started cleaning. Not because the apartment was messy, but because he had been here. His toothbrush. His hoodie on the chair. His charger still plugged into the wall. It all had to go. I tossed it all in a trash bag like I was sweeping out the scene of a crime. And then I opened the closet, and I just stood there. Because his stuff was still touching mine. His jacket draped over mine. His cologne bottle next to my deodorant. Like nothing had happened. Like our lives weren't severed 12 hours ago. That's when I lost it. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. But I sat down right there in the doorway and sobbed like I hadn't cried in years. Ugly crying. The kind that contorts your face and makes you gasp between breaths. The kind where you don't even know what you're crying about anymore, just the loss of something you thought was real. And maybe I wasn't just mourning him. Maybe I was mourning the version of me that trusted him. The guy who made dinner, planned surprises, forgave late replies and stupid little lies. I missed that version of myself more than I missed him. It wasn't the texts from Luca that made me feel the shift. It was when my best friend called. She hadn't even heard about any of this yet, but she could tell something was off. I was surprised by how quickly she showed up, sitting across from me, bringing over Chinese takeout like she could see past the silence and knew I needed something more than food. We sat there for a while eating, not talking. She didn't ask about him. Didn't press for details. She just gave me space. And when I finally spoke, I didn't hold back. I told her everything, the affair, the lies, the feeling of betrayal that hit me harder than any physical punch could. You don't need him, she said. You never did. That felt strange to hear, honestly. In a way, it sounded right, but also so far from where I'd been just days ago. I laughed a little, even though it felt bitter. I don't feel like I don't need him. I feel like I don't know how to not need him. She just nodded, like she understood that too. Like she knew the gap that formed between what I wanted and what was good for me. And then, out of nowhere, she asked, "What's next for you?" I didn't have an answer. Not a real one. I had no idea where I was going, other than the fact that I wasn't going back to him. But that's when I realized something: he wasn't the one who got to decide my next. I did. The days after that conversation with my friend were a blur of small decisions. Nothing big. Just little shifts that started to make the weight feel a little lighter. I stopped answering his calls. I didn't block him, I didn't need to. He knew I wasn't going to pick up. Every time I saw his name on my screen, my heart would race for a moment. But I'd just look at it, take a deep breath, and hit ignore. And then there was the apartment. I couldn't live there anymore. Not with everything that happened under that roof. It wasn't just the bad memories. It was the presence of him, like a ghost hovering around the corners. So I packed up. Not in a dramatic, "I'm leaving" kind of way. Just, slowly. I started making the place mine again. New throw pillows. A different set of sheets. A candle with a scent I actually liked. Little things to remind myself that this was my space. Not our space. And then, I made the call. I found a new place. A small one. A little farther from the city, but it was mine. Only mine. And something about that, owning my own space again, felt like getting back a piece of myself. But the real change didn't come from the apartment. It came when I realized I wasn't just moving out of a relationship, I was moving forward. I didn't need to have all the answers. I didn't need to know exactly how this chapter would end. But I did know one thing for sure: I wasn't going to let my past define my future. The new apartment wasn't a fairy tale. It was small, cramped, and still smelled like fresh paint. But it was mine, and that alone gave me a weird kind of peace. It felt like I was rebuilding my life, one tiny, insignificant detail at a time. But there were days. Days when the weight of everything hit harder than I expected. The loneliness. The quiet. The empty feeling that would creep in when I didn't expect it. I started going out more. Hanging out with friends. Going on long walks. Trying to distract myself, not from the pain, but from the shock that lingered like an echo in the back of my head. How had I not seen it? How had I lived in a relationship for so long without realizing the truth? That sting didn't go away. Not even after all the changes I'd made. And there were moments when I thought about him. Thought about how, for all the lies and the betrayal, he'd once been someone I loved. Someone I'd seen a future with. And then, suddenly, I could hear his voice in my head again. His apologies. The empty promises. It wasn't just the affair that haunted me, it was the idea of who I thought he was. I knew it wasn't healthy to still think about him. But the heart doesn't let go of things like the brain wants it to. It's stubborn. And that was the hardest thing to fight. I wanted to forget him. I wanted to burn all the memories and pretend he never existed. But that's not how healing works, is it? You can't erase the past. You just have to learn how to live with it. A month passed. It wasn't a huge chunk of time, but it felt like a lifetime in some ways. I started to feel like myself again, maybe even better than before. It wasn't a sudden shift, though. It wasn't like one day I woke up and thought, I'm healed. It was just a gradual shift, small victories that piled up over time. One night, I was at a bar with friends when I got a text from him. He wasn't asking for forgiveness. He wasn't trying to get back with me. He wasn't even apologizing anymore. It was just an update. I'm dating someone. I hope you're doing well. There was no emotion attached to it. Just a blunt statement that, in his mind, was just news. The old me would have been devastated by it, probably curled up in bed, thinking about all the things I could have done differently. But this time? I felt nothing. No anger. No sadness. Just indifference. It wasn't that I was glad he was moving on. It wasn't that I didn't care. I just didn't need to feel anything about it. I was finally free. And for the first time in a while, I smiled. Looking back, it's almost surreal. The pain, the confusion, the way I'd convinced myself everything was fine when it clearly wasn't, it all seems like someone else's story now. But it's mine. And somehow, I've come out on the other side stronger. I guess the biggest lesson I learned is that sometimes, we get so caught up in wanting to believe in a version of reality that we forget to see the truth right in front of us. I stayed in that relationship far too long because I didn't want to face the fact that my trust had been shattered. But that was the mistake. Trust isn't something you can rebuild on your own, it has to come from both sides. And if one side isn't playing fair, then there's no foundation to stand on. Another lesson? The importance of knowing who you are, regardless of anyone else. When I let go of him, I thought I was letting go of us. But I was really letting go of the person I used to be with him. The truth is, that person wasn't all of me. Just a part. And when I cut him out, I found the other parts of myself again. For anyone reading this who's in a similar situation, it's hard, but you have to realize that your happiness and peace of mind come first. You can't control other people's actions, but you can control how you respond. And no matter how messy the aftermath is, you'll come out of it stronger if you keep moving forward. You deserve someone who values you for who you are, not for who they want you to be. So when the world feels like it's collapsing around you, remember this, you're not alone. And you'll make it through this. It's hard to believe in love again after something like this. But it's even harder to lose yourself while trying to hold on to someone who doesn't deserve you. That's my advice. Take it for what it's worth.